Governor, I have a couple of questions on abortion that actually don't require long answers. Did you write the ad on abortion where you faced the camera and discussed your views?
Yeah, I talked about it. I didn't do it alone. I've talked with other people about it, but those are my words.
Okay. You say at the end of the ad that your priority is to protect the health and safety of all citizens of Wisconsin. Do you believe a fetus is a citizen?
Well, I believe an unborn child is an important, I mean, when Matt and Alex, before they were born, one on June 30th, the other on July 31st, I, like a lot of parents and grandparents these days, showed their first picture, which was the ultrasound that they had, and was proud about that. And it's like a lot of grandparents, friends that I have now, who will show them off those same sorts of pictures on their iPhones.
So is an unborn child a citizen of the state of Wisconsin, in your view?
Well, years ago, when we passed a law in this state that allowed penalties to be exerted against someone that caused bodily harm, not only to an individual, but to that unborn child, that was something the state of Wisconsin recognizes, not just me. And I said, and the reason at the time I said that, I remember debating about that when I was in the legislature. And I said, if God forbid at that time, we still had an old Chrysler minivan, and Matt and Alex were pretty young, and I said, a few years ago, I had one son that was born, and the other one came a year, a month, and a day later. I said, if God forbid something had happened where someone rammed into our car, and Tonette had been injured, and we had lost our son Alex, who Tonette was pregnant with at the time, I asked people at that chamber then, as I'd ask people right now, you wouldn't send just a get well card, you'd probably send a sympathy card to us because we lost that unborn child. And so I think that's a normal reaction people have, regardless of where they stand politically on the overall issue of the sanctity of life.
4 years ago, I believe it was, you told the editorial board that you opposed abortion even in the event of rape or incest. Is that still your view?
Well, I said I'm pro-life, and to me, as I pointed out the other night in the debate, the Supreme Court more than 40 years ago made it clear what states can or can't do. They made it very clear in a decision more than 40 years ago that applied to all the states across the country, which is why the debates since then, not just since I've been governor, but since that time, have been about particular issues like those we've been talking about the last few years, not on that particular issue.
Well, that brings me to the last question. Wisconsin Right to Life, I believe, has made it part of its agenda to pass legislation banning abortions after 20 weeks. Do you believe abortion should be banned after 20 weeks?
Those are all things we'd have to look at in the future session out there.
Well, you support, I believe you co-sponsored a bill back in '98 saying abortion should be banned after 20 weeks. So I want to pin you down. Should abortion be banned after 20 weeks?
Again, I said those are all things that we'll certainly look at in the next legislature.
No, your personal view, not a legislative view, your personal view.
Well, I mean, I think it's a human life, and I think that's something that people, regardless of where they stand politically, but those are things that we'll have to talk about in the next legislative session if it comes up.
So can I take it that you believe abortion should be banned after 20 weeks?
Well, again, I think it's a human life, so that obviously raises some concerns for me. The things we focused in on the last session were relatively simple and direct forward. Things we talked about the other night in terms of legislation I supported that I think increases safety and yet provides more information for a woman considering her options.
I had one follow-up to your question, and that is, you've been endorsed repeatedly by Pro-Life Wisconsin. They have as part of their agenda that certain contraceptives are abortifacients, such as RU486, IUDs, Ella, and other things. Do you agree with their position?
Well, I mean, you talk about different variations. I haven't been against birth control.
You don't see any form of birth control as an abortifacient?
Again, it all depends on what you define as birth control. But again, you guys are asking a lot of interesting questions that, quite honestly, Bill, you've been out with me on the road, I don't hear anyone ask. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like the questions the other night on the debate. Questions people ask me about are their schools, are their kids' college education. They ask me about jobs and whether or not their neighbor is going to be, who was unemployed years ago, is going to get a job back. We can spend all of our time talking about this, but I mean, James, you've even talked before. I've written many of your pieces about the unemployment rate on the north side of Milwaukee and the challenges there. To me, I don't mind getting in the minutia there, but I mean, honestly, I'd challenge you to come out with me. You're not going to find a day that goes by where any of the details you're asking me about, there are things that ask me in great detail. So you can ask them, but we got a limited amount of time, and I would think people would want to hear about the things that matter most to them.